The ANC was formed on January the 8th in a meeting in a church hall in 1912. As a result, this date over time has become more and more significant for the ANC. What happens as a result of this is that the leader of the ANC uses this day to give a statement about policy, what the party's priorities will be for that year, and what it will try to do to achieve those aims and goals. As the party has become the ruling party in the democratic South Africa, it has become more and more important because the leader of the ANC has tended to be the most important person in the country, often the president. And as a result, what they say about the policies for that year feeds into the State of the Nation speech and then feeds into the goals and aims of the country's government for that year. However, this year is much more significant than it usually is because it's 100 years since the ANC was formed. And so we're going to also see a lot of looking back what the ANC has achieved. It calls itself Africa's most successful liberation movement. And so there'll be a lot of looking back how the ANC achieved democracy, what it did, and what it needs to do going forward. 2012 is not just significant for historical reasons, it's also significant because it's an electoral year within the ANC. So it's a chance to look at the tea leaves. It's the ANC's first big gathering of the year. It's the first time we see all the leaders on the same stage. We'll look at their body language, we'll look at who says what, we'll look at the alliance members. The COSATU and the South African Communist Party traditionally send someone to give fraternal greetings to the ANC on the state. Who will give those speeches? Will it be the general secretaries? Will it be the presidents or chairs of the party? And all of that will become quite important. And then what are they going to say? Is it going to be a wholehearted support? Is it going to be slightly less than that? Is there going to be a warning or some kind of message caught up within that fraternal greeting? All of that's really important. But what's also important is the reaction of the crowd to various ANC leaders. Will President Jacob Zuma get more applause than the Deputy President, Kgalema Motlanthe, for example? These things really matter. In the past, we've seen them being used quite effectively by groups within the ANC to make a statement. And you can't blame the leader because it's the way the crowd reacted to them, whether that was orchestrated or not. And I think that could really be quite important. So there are tea leaves to look for how the crowd reacts to various leaders, look at the body language and what those leaders actually say, and sort of read it again because it's really quite important. In the lead up to this January 8th statement, there are a number of gala dinners, there's sort of political events in and around the location. Of course, this year that's in Bloemfontein, which means ANC leaders will be in Bloemfontein for several days before the event. On the morning, people traditionally start to arrive at the venue from around 10 o'clock, and we're expecting about 120,000 people to be there this year. It does look like the ANC will have an overflow stadium, so they'll have big screens that people will then be able to go to a stadium nearby and still be a major part of what actually happens. And once the leaders are finished in the main stadium, they'll go to the smaller stadiums to go and say hello. And what will then happen is you'll have the fraternal greetings from the various organizations, the leagues, if they're represented, and then we will also, at that point, have the main set-piece speech by the president. After that, there's traditionally a concert, and that's at that point you sort of start to look at the tea leaves. What happened? How important was it? There's also usually a cake. Every year, this cake has been getting bigger and bigger with more and more candles for the ANC, and I expect this year's to be bigger than one we've ever seen before. I think one of the things the ANC will want to focus to do at the beginning of 2012 is to not look too much on 2011, the year that was, because on sort of two sides, it's really faced big challenges to its unity. One, from the ANC Youth League and Julius Malema, and two, from COSATU and Zwelinzima Vavi. And I imagine that 2012 is going to be a year in which history is sort of idealized, is used as a unifying force. What President Jacob Zuma has an opportunity to do here is to use the centenary celebrations to turn 2012 into a year of unity for the ANC. And you can do that by saying, let's look back at our glorious past. Let's not look too hard at the sort of hard political debates of the future, jobs versus decent work, for example. And he'll use that to say, everyone is now united with the ANC. I brought unity to the ANC. Elect me for another term.